everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm Narissa. Most of you know me. I'm the Student Engagement Coordinator in the Office of the Dean of Students. I'm so excited to present today's event, sponsored by our office and the Illinois Arts Council Agency. The title of the event is Igniting Social Change Through the Power of Story and Drum. Today we have the honor of hearing from three dynamic performers and pillars of Chicago, Pat Red, Baba Atiba Walker, and Mama Edie of the National Association of Black Storytellers. Pat Red, whose storytelling name is Serenity, is also a former beloved Director of Community Schools Program of Study at SSA and member of ASHE, the Chicago Association of Black Storytellers. She tells tales of yesterday and transforms tomorrow through folk, cultural, historical, and spiritual stories. She brings stories to life, delighting all within her presence. Serenity believes that stories are gifts wrapped in the spirit of breath. Her stories have been heard all throughout the Chicagoland and suburban areas, and she is on a journey to edify and inspire through the power of story. Baba Atiba Walker, Associate Artistic Director and founding member of Montu Dance Theater of Chicago, is dedicated to the upliftment of humanity through cultural creativity. As world citizens, we must appreciate our differences and amplify our similarities. Baba weaves in the wisdom of African culture through spoken word, through a variety of instruments. He studied traditional methods of drumming in Africa and has drummed through the United States, Mexico, Canada, West Africa, Europe, and the Caribbean islands. And finally, the illustrious Mama Edie, also a member of ASHE, the Chicago Association of Black Storytellers. Whether fun or frolically, or somber and serene, internationally known bilingual storyteller and percussionist Mama Edie McLeod Armstrong tells personal stories and multicultural folk tales to inspire self-knowledge, self-love, personal empowerment, and the ability to find the beauty, joy, and strength in our similarities and our differences. With the support of an Illinois Arts Council grant, Mama Edie is with us today to explore through the power of story and song what each of us can do to create the world we choose to live in. Please give a round of applause to Pat Red, Baba Atiba Walker, and Mama Edie.
Hey, Johnny, Good afternoon. Did you all like that little song? Yeah. Did it help you feel kind of good? All right. I'm Mama Edie, and that is the song that has for hundreds of years been used in parts of West Africa, especially along the areas of the ancient Malian Empire, those countries such as Senegal, Mali, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, and parts of Ghana, to welcome the Jali. Some people know that person as the griot or the storyteller. Now in these cultures, this person is much more than a storyteller. This person is a keeper of the culture. This Jali is someone who, if you lived in their village, they could tell you about your grandmama and your great-grandmama and your great-great-granddaddy, and they could tell you about special arrangements of the stars when certain babies were born. They could tell you about great wars that had been fought and won. They could tell you about people like Queen Nzinga of Angola, who fought repeatedly against the Portuguese and won many times until they were finally conquered. The Jali, through music and through story, would help you stay connected to the things that were most precious to your community, to your culture, and would teach you and encourage you to carry those stories forward. Now, we have a story today about a very special woman whose name was Wangari Maathai. And she was from Kenya and lived in our time and was one of the sheroes who did some very, very amazing things. And you know, every now and then, when we think about social justice, we've got so many problems going on right now, don't we? But we also have, at the same time, that we have a lot of people whose judgment one might question. We also have people who are determined to inspire hope and who are determined to inspire love and unity and the preservation of our world. What are we going to do if we keep destroying the planet? And what good does it do to pretend like it ain't even happening? And so this brings us to the story of Wangari Maathai, who I'm sure you will find to be very much a shero in her own regard. The story is going to be led by Pat Red, or who we affectionately call Sister Serenity.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. It's nice to be home.
Now, do they know what that means?
Well, that ain't mine.
Tell them a little bit. Some of them do.
How many in here are first years? Second years? Is everybody second year? Well, as Narissa mentioned, I used to work here, and I worked with that lady over there, Jenny Mead. So that's why I said it's good to be back home. Wangari Maathai was an environmental and a political activist. She worked hard as a first-generation college-bound student. I bet some of you know what I'm talking about. She not only earned her bachelor's degree, her master's degree, and her PhD, but she did it in a shorter amount of time.
Now, you know, that's something.
Yes, it is.
That to get it at all is something.
Yes. Well, let me tell you a little more about this sister. Whenever she thought about her home, it was always her intention to return back home. Now, there are those who leave legacies behind when they transition from this life to the next, but not Wangari. Wangari began her legacy long before her death in 2011. I'm going to tell you, that sister had it within her that she needed to get back home so that she could help rebuild and restore the land. Because every time she would travel back home, she was noticing that there were fewer and fewer trees.
And that's happening all over the world, isn't it?
Yes. One of the trees that she noticed was disappearing more and more was the fig tree.
No, not the fig tree. Isn't that their most sacred tree?
Yes. So that fig tree was so sacred that even as a little girl, she knew better than to pick the branches off the ground and use them. She just didn't do it. All while growing up, she remembered seeing the people live off the land. They were happy, they were healthy, and they were wealthy in their own right because they were taking care of each other and they were taking care of the land. But what she witnessed upon her return was utterly devastating, because what she noticed is the people, they were no longer eating the food they were growing. They were buying the food from the store.
A lot of that going on these days, too.
Yeah. And oven in itself, there's nothing wrong with that because we do it, right? But back then, and for the people who were used to growing their food and eating it, it was costly. And the people But some of them were getting weak because of the additives that were being added to food.
And it also keeps them dependent upon those in charge.
Yes.
If they're no longer in control of the food.
Let me tell you what else is happening.
Tell us, girl.
Well, not only were they doing that, but the government, they were cutting trees down left and right. They were cutting them down day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year. All so that they could clear more and more land away so people could farm. But not so that they could grow the food to eat, but so that they could grow the food to sell. The people were getting complacent as well. You see, their spirits were getting broken. This broke Wangari's heart, but it did not break her spirit because she knew she had to do something.
So what she do?
Oh, let me tell you what she did. She went around teaching the women about the importance of cultivating the land. And then she taught them about the seedlings of the trees that once populated the land. Now, some of the seedlings didn't make it, but Wangari did not get discouraged, and she encouraged the women not to get discouraged as well. And before long, a lot of trees were being planted, let me tell you. So many trees were being planted that the government wanted to try and cut those trees down too. But let me tell you what the people did. Wangari and the people, they used their bodies as human shields to keep those trees from being cut down.
Now
They were
justice.
standing up for justice. She did more. She would go into the villages throughout Kenya and teach the women the importance of planting trees. She taught them well. She went into the prisons and talked to the men about the variety of trees that needed to be planted. She taught them well. She went into the schoolhouses and talked to the children of every age and told them, y'all don't have to wait till you're grown to go and plant some trees. You can do it now. She taught them well. And before long, because of everywhere Wangari was going and leaving seedlings behind to be planted, the people were becoming confident. They were becoming comfortable in their own skin again. And they were becoming healthier in body, mind, and spirit. Why? Because they were kind of living the principle of Redeemer. You know?
Work and responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, they started rebuilding their villages. They started making their neighbors' problems their problems. And they were solving those problems together. And before long, because the people in Wangari fought the environmental fight of planting trees as far as the eye could see. There were trees growing everywhere, deep-rooted trees. Wangari and the people fought a good fight. They ran a good race, and they planted all kinds of trees, but most especially the fig tree. Wangari Matai, Wangari Matai, Wangari Matai left a legacy behind. Wangari Maatai, Wangari Maatai, Wangari Maatai left the legacy behind.
And you know what? I think it led to the people wanting to celebrate.
Yeah.
And you know there's a song from Kenya that is used for celebration, and it goes kind of like this. Wana baraka wale wambao, wana baraka wale wambao, wana baraka wale wambao, na Yesu mwenye alisema, haleluya, haleluya. Sister Serenity. Hey.
Freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me. Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me. Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. We are flute from the northern part of Ghana, djembe from the old Malian Empire. Great black music is the language of our African seed, through which we transmit the thoughts of our condition. This language is based on an ancient tradition of scientific knowledge, which we inherited as an heirloom. Its foundation and laws are encased in natural phenomena, and its objective is to maintain us in a state of spiritual affinity, sympathetic to universal vibration. This brings me to what I love to do with people sitting around like you all, and we're all sharing in this experience. We go to the skill of listening. We always tell our children, listen, pay attention. And for social justice, it's important that we listen to one another so we can truly understand one another. So I'm going to use this drum, the djembe, to play some sounds that I'll need you all to remember. For those of you all who aren't eating right now, who are freed up and can participate in this, I need you to just listen to the sound and just be able to clap your hand at the appropriate time. Are you all with me?
Yes.
All right. The very first sound I want you to listen to is this. Now that last note that you saw me do with the flam with both hands, that's the one I want you to clap on. Don't do it yet. Listen to it again. All right, now next time I play that, give me one clap at the appropriate point, the end of that rhythm where I get that flam. that again. Oh, very good. Now I have just two more parts. The second part sounds like this. Just watch and listen. I'm going to clap where I want you to clap at. Yeah, get it when you get it. Good. One last part. Good. We have the three parts. Now I'm going to have some fun on the djembe. I'm going to speak to you a little bit in the language of the drum. And when I play those phrases, I need you to respond with the appropriate clap. Maybe we should go over them again just to remind ourselves. The first one, which is actually the signal to start, is this one. Right on, you're on point. Where you're clapping at is where I'm going to start my rhythm, so that's good. The second one, while I'm in the rhythm already, but you'll hear it come out of it. Oh, you're on point, I love it. The last one. Oh, do this no more. Good. Now let me go on and have a good time. If y'all feel like dancing or anything, feel free to. But remember, the skill that we're working with is listening. So be ready. I'm not going to let you know when I'm going to play it. I'm just going to play it, and you need to respond appropriately. No, I didn't play one of the signals. I know y'all ready. Don't anticipate it. Listen for it. Appreciate your attention. And remember, you all, the beauty of listening reminds us of the fact that, as Aye Amma would say, all beauty is in the creative purpose of our relationships. And as we creatively dealt with that, remind ourselves how important it is to just pay attention, just listen. There's so much we can gain by just listening to one another. Not anticipating what we're going to say, not waiting for each other to finish so we can say what we want to say, but truly listening to one another. Thank you for your attention.
the things that African people had to do during the time of the transatlantic slave trade was definitely to listen. Because you had all these people from all these different cultures speaking all these different languages who could not understand each other, and yet they had to use their intelligence and their creativity to come up with a way to somehow understand what each other was saying. That's an awful lot of intelligence to have to do something like that when nobody is teaching you, when nobody is actually actively teaching you. So we know that during the time of the transatlantic slave trade, people ended up in places like Cuba. I know a lot of people say Cuba, but Americans do some interesting things to other people's languages, right? But people ended up in Cuba, they ended up in Puerto Rico, you lovely island. Okay, let me stop. They ended up in Brazil, where people speak what? Portuguese. They ended up in Haiti, where the Africans were forced to speak French. They ended up in Mexico, especially in places like Puerto Vallarta and Veracruz. They ended up all over the world. So we subsequently have the African diaspora. All those places where children of African descent have been dispersed. And with them, they took the sound of the drum. They took the sound of the drum in their hearts, even in places where once they tried to use the drum, they had the drum banned because people could see that they were able to communicate with each other with the sound of the drum, and therefore planned rebellions and uprisings that were successful. Hello. A lot of times people don't know those stories, the stories of the successful uprisings, where there were Africans who were actually able to break free. And so what I'd like to do now, in honor of our Spanish-speaking cousins, I want to sing a song that talks about the beauty of dark complexioned people. I have a friend from Cuba who told me that as a child, when she was growing up, she was the darkest one in her family, and she's a little bit lighter than I am, and they called her the little darkie, and thought that it was funny. It was a joke for them. Well, it's not a joke for a person when you know that it's intended. That's the point, that's the part that hurts, is the intention of being hurtful or being harmful. So as an example, I had a situation. I'm also a speech and language pathologist. And one of my kids, years ago, this was what set me on to doing storytelling. He was about 9 years old, little African-American boy. And he came over to me, he said, "Miss Armstrong." I said, "What is it, babe?" He said, "I was so black, I look like an African." I said, "Well, honey, did you say thank you?" Looked at me and said, "Huh?" Mindset. He didn't know that he didn't have to be ashamed of his complexion. He didn't have to be ashamed of being an African, being a child of Africa. He just didn't know what he needed to know. So I became a storyteller. I had to start writing stories so that my children could see the beauty in them that I saw that they couldn't see. I had to teach them what there was to be proud of, to be a child of African descent. And what he had the opportunity to be proud of, even at his age. You know, at any age, a person can do something to stand up for justice. Isn't it true? At any age, in many, many circumstances. It can be little things. It can be somebody having an argument over who stole my Eggo at home. And then you say, "Now you know you took that child's Eggo." It can be something simple like that. It can be bullying in school. It can be bullying on the job, where people stand up for each other and say, "No, we're not going to take this anymore. This is inappropriate behavior." Just because you're in charge doesn't mean that you have the right to be disrespectful, to be discourteous, to be insensitive. It's not right. Any of us can stand up for justice. And so, reflecting on the importance that it is for us to feel good about living in the skin that we're in, I want to share a song with you that was written by a man from Puerto Rico. His name is Tite Curet Alonso. And he was from Puerto Rico. And this is a song that basically says, the beautiful faces of my black people, when they walk past me, are like a parade of molasses in bloom. Isn't that beautiful language? A parade of molasses in bloom. And he says that even though we have known hard times, even though we've known tears and we've known pain, we also have great love and we have great strength and we have great compassion and we have our dances, we have our rhythms, and we have great, great joy and great love. And so we will continue to survive. And the song goes kind of like this. Las caras lindas de mi gente negra son un desfile de melaza en flor, que cuando pasan frente a mí se alegra desde negrura todo el corazón. Las caras lindas de mi raza prieta llenan de llanto, de pena y dolor. Son dos verdades que la vida rieta, pero que llevan dentro mucho amor. Somos la melaza que ríe, somos la melaza que llora, somos la melaza que llama y en cada beso es conmovedora. Por eso vivo orgullosa de su colorido, somos de tu amable de clara poesía. Tienen su ritmo, tienen melodía, las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Tienen su ritmo, tienen melodía, las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Las caras lindas de mi gente negra, las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Thank you. And now, to kind of wrap things up a little bit, I'm going to share a story with you. And if you want to stick around a little bit more, we can do a little bit more, but we got a little something more for you. This is a story, this is my own personal story about, I mentioned before about how children, anybody can stand up for justice. And I had an experience when I was 15 years old to stand up for justice. And it was a very, very special time. I remember waking up that morning to the smell of fresh, buttery cinnamon apples, cooking in the kitchen, smell those biscuits as they were baking in the oven. My dad was making me a very, very special breakfast, and he knew that I loved cinnamon apples on some biscuits. This was a special day because there was going to be a march in one of our communities in Chicago. The year was 1966, and the area was Marquette Park on Chicago's southwest side. And this was an area where African Americans and Latinos only went at that time if they were going to the Midway Airport, because otherwise people were being beaten and abused in many different ways. And so at the time, there was a policy called redlining that was intended to keep many people of color out of various communities. And so Dr. King had been asked to come to Chicago to lead this march in Marquette Park. Now, I had been raised in Catholic elementary and high schools. I went to St. Carthage in Inglewood and Aquinas Dominican in South Shore. And some of our teachers got us together with some of the Euro-American children in the Marquette Park area so that we could have conversations. And we talked about matters of social justice. 13 and 14 and 15 years old, we were talking about matters of social justice and how we need to do, as Baba Watiba was saying, listen to each other. Come to know each other's real stories, because then we can learn the compassion and we can feel where each other happens to be. And so, some of the nuns from our elementary school asked some of our parents if we could go to the march with them. Of course, my parents were at first a little bit afraid to have me do that, and so was I. But I knew it was something important, and so I wanted to go. And so, it was arranged. So after breakfast that day, my dad decided to drive me to school. Well, the school was only 2 blocks away from our house. I could have walked, I normally walk, but this was a special day. This was a day when my dad wondered if his baby girl would be okay in this neighborhood where so many had not been. And so we went to the school, we drove in the car to the school, and when we got there, there were children who were standing around. There were only maybe about 12 or 13 of us. And our parents were going over to the nuns. We couldn't hear what they were saying, but we could pretty much figure that they were talking to the nuns and saying, you better take care of my child. Eventually, it was time to get on the buses. Well, when we got on the buses, we were waving out the window to our parents, not knowing that this was going to be the last time, but hoping probably not. Because we had seen the newsreels before of what happened to people when they stood up for justice. And some of them did not make it home. Here we were, 15 years old. So as we're on the buses, we started chattering a little bit and sharing some chips and things like that, trying to kind of take the edge off. But then as we were getting closer and closer to the community, we started to hear the sound of this angry crowd. And they were hollering and screaming, and as we looked out the windows, we saw people throwing bottles and rocks in the air. We saw people throwing their fists up into the air. Faces, I had never seen faces like that. I had never before that day looked into the face of hate. I'm 67 now. I still remember what it looked like. And sometimes it still hurts. So we get there, it's time to get off the bus, right? Now, would you get off the bus in a situation like that? We kind of wondered if we wanted to get off the bus. But we knew that so many of our parents and other people before us had marched, had done many things to try to stand up for justice, and we knew that it was simply our turn. And so we got off the bus. Now, when we got off the bus and we started to walk towards where the people were already gathered in the streets and already going up the road, have you seen those movies where you see Christians going down the road and you've got all these angry people on the side, they're being led to the lion's den? That's what I felt like. I felt like we were among the Christians going to the lion's den. And they were screaming and yelling and they were spitting at us, and it was a very terrible time. And then a little woman who, she was shorter than I was, came up to me, and normally when somebody approaches me, I look at them and I say hello, but it wasn't that kind of party. So she came up to me and she looked at me and she hesitated, almost as though she wasn't sure if she wanted to attack me or not. But then I guess she decided, well, she had to fulfill her mission. And so she began to curse me and called me everything but a child of God. And then her young son, I guess it was her son, he looked to be about 9 years old. He came over to me and he began to curse me too. What we teach our children, I was so stunned I couldn't even move. So one of the nuns came over to me and she reached out and she got my hand and she said, come on, Edith, let's go. And so without a word, I turned and I went along with her. And then as we were joining the others and we were continuing down the road and the angry sounds kind of blurred because everything was kind of indistinct and just very, very angry and very, very frightening. But then all of a sudden, I heard from way up in the front some other sounds that started overshadowing those angry sounds that I was hearing. I wondered, where is Dr. King? Where is Dr. King? And I didn't get to see him during the march that day, but I knew he was up there, and so I was okay. And the sounds that I heard coming from up front were sounds like, we shall overcome someday. They were singing and singing, and the more the song came further and further back to where I was, then we started singing too, and then all of a sudden, the sounds of that song drowned out all those angry, hateful sounds that were coming from the side. And I remember I was stepping proud then. I felt like on some level I had stood up for justice, and I felt that on some level I had overcome something. I at least had overcome the fear of not doing something. And that's what a lot of us are faced with, the fear of just taking one step to do something. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to get our names in the newspaper to get us on TV. But each one of us can do something to stand up for justice. And so what I want to share with you now is a song that I wrote for a musical that I was in that was produced by a very wonderful actor. Her name is Teki Lomnicki. And she did a production called 6 Stories Up in Social Justice. And she asked me to represent Rosa Parks. And so she had asked us to either write a song for the segment of the show that we were doing, or that they would write one for us. And I'm like, no. I'm writing this song. And so the song is called Stand Up. And it goes like this. It's time to stand up for the right to sit down. It's time to stand up. No more fear will be around. Pull your shoulders back and dry your tears. We've taken this for too many years. I was never meant to be a slave. This is the life that no one gave to me but God. So it's time to stand up. No more sitting in the back and no bus. Stand up. For my children's sake, I'll raise my bus. They will have a decent education. Serve notice to this nation. Gonna have to turn this thing around. Gonna have to stand our ground. Sit anywhere when I pay my due fare. Drink from any water fountain. You have decent work for equal pay. You have welcoming hearts for my kids to play. You have justice in the courts of this land. I have the right to hold any hand. People to look at me and see much I have a right to be. All that I can. So it's time to stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, come on, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Let me hear you. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Stand up, 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 stand up. Thank you. All right. I'd like to thank the University of Chicago, the School of Social Services Administration, most especially Narissa. Let's give it up, give it up. And Princeton. Let's give it up. And Pat Red, who used to work here and established this connection for us. And I'd like to also give a very special thank you to the Illinois Arts Council, which is the reason why we came here in the first place. And I'd like to especially give a thank you to Ms. Susan Dixon, who is the director of the Illinois Arts Council program. She's been very, very supportive. And I need to mention something special. Today is my mom's birthday, who made her transition in 1984 in May. And she was my first and best storyteller that I ever had. And so in her honor, I wanted to dedicate this program to her. And I want to ask you all to give a special applause for my mom. Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank Babu Atiba Walker from Muntu Dance Theater. Sister Serenity. And again, I'm Mama Edie McLeod Armstrong. And if some of you have to leave now, that's fine. If some of you want to stick around, ask a few questions. We've got an interesting array of books if you might want to ask, well, why did you bring that? What's that one about? And what is that thing over there anyway? Which I was supposed to tell y'all about, not that. But just really quickly, that's a miniature size of a kora, which is actually a 21-stringed instrument that is used by the Jalis, the storytellers of West Africa. I don't play it, it's just for show. So, again, thank you all very much. And if anybody has any questions, I can get this over there. Does anybody have any questions? If you don't, it's all right. Great. Good job. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay. We got a question over here.
Right, so, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you have, a teepee with Native Americans
Ashe.
there, okay. And so, what is the story behind that?
The reason why I brought the Native American
Right,
is because we're in America, and if anybody has got issues around matters of social justice, clearly it's Native American people, because we don't hardly even see them anymore, because they've pretty much been wiped out by people who never came to understand the concept of enough. It's also a fact that many children of African descent have Native American ancestry. And so just the same way that I honored our Spanish-speaking cousins of the African diaspora by bringing the Native American child with me, I'm also honoring that aspect of our ancestry as well. Thank you for your question. Okay. Any other questions? Don't all speak at once. Okay, all right. Well, again, thank you very much for your very kind attention.